New York had seen harsh winters before, but the night of December 31st felt like something alive, a force that pressed against every window pane and howled down every street. Snow battered Manhattan in thick white sheets that blurred the skyline and swallowed the sound of traffic until the whole city felt suspended in cold silence. Inside, the penthouse level of Wolf Tower warmth still lingered from a large corporate New Year event that had finished only an hour earlier. The chandeliers were dimming. The catering team had gone home early to avoid the closing roads, and security had retreated to their stations on the lower floors. Only one person remained on duty among the staff, Maya Ellis. At 25, Maya worked part-time as a maid, not because she wanted to stay invisible, but because she had learned through life that being unnoticed was often the safest way to survive in a city that never stopped moving. She tightened her scarf and continued gathering glasses from the marble counters. The guests had left confetti on the floor and used napkins on the tables, and although her shift had technically ended, she stayed behind because Lauren Pierce, the operations manager, had said in an efficient tone that the penthouse must be spotless before morning. Lauren was in her early 30s, polished, confident, and sharp. She ran the building operations with an unyielding sense of hierarchy, and for reasons Maya never understood, Lauren treated her differently from the other staff. Tonight had been no exception. Lauren walked through the penthouse earlier with her arms crossed as if assessing a battlefield, and stopped in front of Maya with a clipped smile. "You can finish the rest alone. The storm is already blocking most exits, so you will need to make your own way home." With that, Lauren left without offering help or arranging transport. Maya accepted it the way she accepted many things, quietly. She finished wiping the last counter while glancing at the glass wall overlooking the storm. Snow swirled like white smoke under the glow of the city lights. She knew the subway might be shutting down soon and buses were likely canceled, but she could not stay here. People like her did not belong in places made of glass and wealth. She stepped into the hallway, the soft hum of the building settling around her as she walked toward the service elevator. Cold air rushed in when she stepped onto the loading dock. It felt immediate and sharp, biting at her cheeks and slipping through her coat. She pulled the zipper up to her chin and stepped into the night. The wind pushed back fiercely as she tried to shield her face. She whispered to herself that it was just a few blocks to the station. Just a few. She just needed to walk. High above her, inside the private office of Wolf Industries, a screen lit up with a notification. "Employee remains on site after clearance." Adrian Wolf glanced at it without interest at first. He was reviewing year-end data, the kind of work that allowed him to stay detached and in control. But when the system highlighted a security camera feed, his eyes narrowed. The footage showed the loading dock. It showed Maya stepping into the storm and nearly losing her footing as the wind shoved her sideways. She paused, braced herself, then kept walking with slow, determined steps. Adrian rose from his chair before he realized he had moved. For years, he had maintained a reputation built on discipline and logic. Feelings had no place in his decisions. But something about the image on the screen fractured that control in an instant. He leaned closer as the camera feed flickered from one angle to another, tracking her small figure pushing through the snow-filled darkness. She should not be out there. Not tonight. The roads were closing, and the temperature had dropped dangerously low. His jaw tightened. He grabbed his coat from the back of the chair and strode toward the private elevator. The security team called after him through the intercom, asking if he needed assistance, but he ignored it. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. When he stepped inside, his reflection stared back at him faintly in the steel panels. His expression was unguarded, something close to panic breaking through the calm he usually carried like armor. The doors slid shut. For a moment in the dim light he whispered in disbelief. Why was she walking home alone? As soon as he reached the lobby, he pushed through the glass doors and into the storm. Wind lashed against him with almost physical force, but he did not stop. He scanned the street, his breath turning to white clouds in the air. Snow pressed into his eyelashes and clung to the shoulders of his coat. Somewhere in this storm, Maya was struggling against the cold. Somewhere in this city, drowning in white, she was walking alone. The thought sent a shiver through him deeper than the wind ever could. He stepped off the curb and into the swirling night, each stride urgent, each breath filled with fear that he was already too late. Snow swallowed Adrian the moment he stepped off the curb. The wind pushed against him with the force of a moving train, and the city lights blurred into streaks behind the white curtain falling from the sky. His coat whipped around his legs as he fought forward, eyes scanning every direction for a glimpse of Maya. Cars were abandoned along the street, their tires half buried in snow. Headlights dimmed under a frosty glaze. The sidewalks were nearly empty, except for a few people rushing to find shelter. Adrian moved fast enough that his breath came out in sharp bursts. He tried to call security again, but the signal sputtered in the storm. He had no patience for waiting. He needed to find her. At the corner, he turned toward the direction of the nearest subway entrance where she would logically go, but the staircase was blocked by a metal barrier and a sign lit read "Station closed" due to weather. A gust of wind hit him head-on, sending a sting of icy flakes across his face. He raised his arm to shield his eyes and kept moving. Memories he had not allowed himself to feel in years began slipping through the cracks in his control. He saw a younger version of himself running down a snowy street in another blizzard, shouting his sister's name, footsteps slipping on ice. She had wandered out during a power outage, confused and scared, and by the time he found her, she had collapsed behind a row of cars. Even now, the memory burned through him with the coldness of that night. He shook his head as if to clear it. This is different. But the fear felt the same. He reached the next block and saw faint footprints leading away from the building, already half erased by the wind. He followed them. His shoes sank into snow that reached his ankles, then higher. He forced his legs through it, one step, then another. The storm roared around him, drowning out the city. For a moment he almost lost the trail entirely, but then he spotted a glove near the curb. Maya's glove. He recognized the small tear along the thumb seam. He grabbed it and turned sharply down the side street. Maya had tried to reach the elevated train near the river, he realized. The service road she usually took went in that direction. He followed the road until he reached the underpass where the train platform stairs stood behind a half-closed gate. Snow gathered thickly under the structure and the wind whistled through the beams overhead. Adrian stepped into the tunnel of sound and looked around. The platform above was dark. The turnstiles were locked. No sign of her. His pulse hammered painfully. He took a few steps back out into the storm and scanned the intersection. A few feet away, the snow looked deeper, disturbed, uneven. He hurried toward the spot, only to find nothing but icy pavement beneath. For a moment, he feared she had fallen into the road and been taken by the plows, but the plows were not running tonight. His breath fogged in front of him, and he bent forward, gripping his knees, a rare moment of losing composure. She was here. She had to be. He stood again and forced himself to breathe, to think. The wind blew from the west. If Maya had been walking against it, she might have drifted sideways without realizing. Buildings created pockets of swirling snow that pulled people off course. He turned west. Then he saw something. At first it was nothing more than a mound of snow near a quiet bus stop, but a flash of dark fabric caught his eye. He ran toward it, slipping once, but catching himself on a railing. As he approached, his heart clenched. A figure lay partially buried by the snowdrift, one arm visible, fingers red from the cold. Maya. He dropped to his knees beside her. For one horrifying second, she did not move. He brushed the snow from her face with trembling hands and felt an almost dizzying wave of fear. Her skin was cold, her lashes frosted. Maya. He said her name again, louder this time. Her eyelids fluttered faintly. Relief broke through him so sharply that he exhaled like he had been holding his breath for hours. He gently slid one arm under her shoulders and another behind her knees, lifting her as if she weighed nothing at all. Her head fell lightly against his shoulder. The snow whipped around them as he stood there holding her, shielding her from the storm with his own body. His voice came out rough. "Maya, do not do this to me." She made a weak sound, barely audible. He pulled her closer. He turned toward the street, cradling her carefully, and began the long walk back toward the main road where the SUV could navigate. Each step was deliberate, each breath filled with urgency. She shivered once against his chest and he tightened his hold. Almost there. Just stay with me. The wind clawed at him as he pushed forward, but he did not look back. All he saw was the pale curve of her face resting against him, and the fear that if he had arrived minutes later, she might have been lost in the storm completely. Warmth returned slowly, like light pushing through a heavy fog, and the first thing Maya felt was the soft vibration of a heater humming somewhere nearby. She did not open her eyes at once. Her body was exhausted, her thoughts slow drifting somewhere between sleep and awareness. A faint scent of leather and clean cologne reached her before she understood where she was. Then she heard a voice low and unsteady in a way she had never heard from him before. "Maya, can you hear me?" She blinked, vision blurred for a moment, and saw the interior of a large SUV glowing with soft orange light. Heated air filled the space. A blanket was wrapped around her shoulders, and a heavy coat lay across her lap like a protective shield. She turned her head slightly and saw Adrian Wolfe sitting beside her, his posture tense, his hands still gripping the edges of the coat he had draped over her as if he feared letting go. Snow clung to his hair and the collar of his coat. His expression was a mixture of relief and something deeper, something shaken. When he saw her eyes open fully, a breath escaped him, almost a sigh. "You are awake." Maya swallowed her voice barely above a whisper. What happened? Her memory came in fragments, cold wind. The blizzard pushing her sideways, the darkness near the station the moment her legs gave out. She shuddered involuntarily. Adrian noticed and immediately adjusted the heater closer to her. "You were outside far too long. Your body temperature dropped quickly." He paused as though steadying himself. "I thought I lost you." The honesty in his tone startled her. Adrian Wolfe was a man known for calculating decisions, for precise communication and emotional restraint. Hearing him sound this raw felt unreal. She tried to sit up straighter, pulling the blanket closer. "I am sorry. I did not mean to worry anyone." He shook his head sharply. "Do not apologize. Not for this. You were forced to leave alone. That should never have happened." Maya looked down at her hands, fingertips still tingling from returning warmth. She felt strangely self-conscious being so close to him, wrapped in his coat, fragile and recovering in a space that did not belong to her world. She glanced at him, unsure how to respond. Adrian noticed the uncertainty and lowered his voice. "You are safe now. We are heading to the tower. You need warmth and rest." She nodded slowly. "Thank you for finding me." He looked at her, then truly looked, his gaze steady in a way that held something unspoken. "I had to." The car continued through the snow-filled streets, tires crunching softly. Outside Manhattan was quiet, draped in white, the storm still fierce but distant behind the insulated windows. Inside the vehicle, the atmosphere felt strangely still. Maya shifted under the blanket and felt the weight of the coat again. It was heavy, warm, unmistakably his, and she hesitated before speaking. "You gave me your coat." Adrian glanced down as if only now noticing the snow melted on his shirt beneath. "You needed it more than I did." His voice softened, and I could not feel the cold. Not compared to the thought of leaving you there. She looked away, her heartbeat suddenly unsteady. She was used to people keeping their distance, used to being overlooked or treated like an extra pair of hands, but tonight, Adrian had crossed the city in a blizzard for her. That fact settled somewhere deep inside her, warm and confusing. The SUV slowed as it approached the private entrance of Wolfe Tower. Security lights illuminated the falling snow, making it sparkle like tiny shards of glass. The driver stepped out to assist, but Adrian raised a hand firmly. "I will take her." He opened the door, and snow rushed in again, though not as fiercely as before. He stepped out, then turned to lift Maya gently, one arm behind her back and the other steadying her as she placed her feet on the ground. She was still weak, her legs uncertain, and when she swayed, he caught her instantly. "Easy. You are not fully steady yet." His grip was careful but solid. She looked up at him, cheeks warming despite the cold. "I can walk. I just need a moment." Adrian's jaw tensed slightly as if suppressing an argument. Then he nodded. "Stay close to me." They moved slowly through the quiet lobby, which was empty except for the night security guard who stepped aside, respectfully hiding the surprise in his eyes when he saw his CEO supporting someone so tenderly. When the elevator doors closed, the hush inside felt almost unreal. Only their breathing filled the small space. Maya leaned lightly against the wall, her strength still returning. Adrian watched her with a guarded intensity, as if he needed visual confirmation that she was truly alive, truly here. She managed a small, tired smile. "You look cold, too. You should rest." He exhaled, a hint of disbelief crossing his expression. "I am fine. The only thing that mattered tonight was getting to you." Her breath caught for a second. She turned her gaze to the elevator floor, feeling warmth rise in her chest that had nothing to do with the heater. When they reached the private level, Adrian guided her toward the penthouse suite she had never been inside before. The doors opened to a softly lit space filled with warm air and muted elegance. He helped her inside, careful not to rush her. Once she stood steady, he finally allowed his hands to fall to his sides. His voice dropped to a quiet tone she had never heard from him. "Maya, do not ever think you are just another employee. Tonight reminded me how wrong that idea is." She met his gaze, unsure what to say. Adrian took a slow breath. "Rest now. That is all you need to do." Maya nodded, exhaustion returning. As she sank into the warmth of the penthouse, she felt a strange sense of safety, unfamiliar yet comforting, knowing that he had carried her out of the storm and brought her back to life. The penthouse doors closed behind them with a soft sound that was almost swallowed by the warmth inside. Maya stood still for a moment, steadying herself as she looked around. She had cleaned the outer lounge before the formal living room used for meetings and events, but this was different. This was the private side of the penthouse, the part no employee ever entered, the part she only heard about through quiet whispers in the staff break room. Soft, golden lamps illuminated a space that felt lived in rather than displayed. A large bookshelf lined one wall filled with hardcovers and travel journals. A single leather jacket hung casually over the back of a chair. A mug sat near the kitchen sink, steam faintly rising from it as if someone had left it only minutes ago. She felt like she had stepped into a place guarded by invisible velvet ropes, a world she was not supposed to see. Adrian watched her carefully, noting the hesitation in her stance. The heater clicked on with a soft hum. "Come, sit. You need warmth more than anything right now." She hesitated again, unsure if she should walk across a space that felt too personal, but her legs were still weak and the cold exhaustion tugged at her. He guided her toward a long couch covered in a gray wool blanket. She sank into it slowly. The cushion enveloped her with a comfort she had not felt in days. Adrian stepped away only long enough to retrieve a warmed towel from the cabinet and returned with it, placing it gently around her shoulders. She felt the heat seep through the fabric into her skin. "Thank you," she murmured. Her voice sounded small in the large room. Adrian did not answer right away. He crouched in front of her so he could see her face clearly and checked her hands again, making sure the color was returning. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than the room's lighting. "You scared me tonight." Maya blinked, unsure she heard correctly. "Me?" "Yes, you." His brows knit together, something vulnerable flickering across his expression. "I saw the security footage. I saw the storm. I saw you step into it alone. And then the city lost half its cameras in the blizzard. I thought the worst." She swallowed the weight of his words, settling heavily. "I did not want to trouble anyone," she whispered. He shook his head. "You are not trouble. You are someone who deserves safety." His gaze stayed on her for a moment longer than she expected, then he stood moving with purpose but still shaken beneath the composed exterior. "Rest here. I will get you something warm to drink." Maya watched him walk toward the kitchen, his shoulders tense as if he still carried the storm inside him. She looked around again, taking in the details. The penthouse was not sterile or showy like many luxury homes she had cleaned. Instead, it felt like a space someone retreated to rather than displayed. A soft throw blanket draped over an armchair. A black and white photograph of a mountain range hung above a console table. A pair of running shoes sat near the balcony door. It was strangely humanizing to see these pieces of his life, subtle evidence that Adrian Wolfe existed outside of boardrooms and headlines. She noticed a small light blinking green in the corner. A security camera. But this one was angled downward, turned to face the floor rather than the room. She wondered briefly why. When Adrian returned, he handed her a mug of ginger tea, steam curling gently upward. "Drink slowly. It will help your body warm from the inside." She nodded and took a careful sip. Heat spread through her chest immediately. Adrian sat down in the chair opposite the couch, close enough to watch her without hovering. Silence lingered between them, but not the uncomfortable kind. It was more like the quiet after a dangerous moment passes when both people are still recovering from the fear they shared, even if unspoken. After several minutes, he spoke again, this time in a low, thoughtful tone. "No one should have left you alone tonight, especially not with a storm like this." Maya looked down, fingers tightening around the mug. "Lauren said the shifts were already covered and that I could handle closing alone." Adrian's jaw clenched. He tried to soften his reaction but failed slightly. Lauren should not have said that. He stood abruptly and walked to a tablet mounted on the wall. He tapped a few commands, checking system logs. The penthouse lights reflected off his tense expression. Maya felt a sudden twist of worry. "I do not want any trouble. I just want to work and not cause issues." Adrian turned to her slowly. "Your safety is not trouble." She lowered her eyes again, unsure how to respond, unsure what any of this meant. After a moment, he walked back and lowered himself into the chair again, leaning forward slightly. "You look tired. You should sleep for a while." Her breath hitched. "Here. In your penthouse. Just for tonight. It is the warmest place and you need recovery. The guest room is fully prepared. I will not be far." She hesitated. "Are you sure?" His response came immediately. "Yes, absolutely." Something in his tone made her chest tighten. She tried to rise from the couch but swayed again. Adrian stepped forward, instinctively catching her elbow with steady hands. He did not rush her, only supported her until she regained balance. "I am fine," she whispered. "Just tired." He nodded once. "Let me help." He guided her down a short hallway to a guest room she had never seen. Soft light filtered from a lamp beside a neatly made bed. The sheets looked impossibly warm. Maya stepped inside slowly, her body sinking under the weight of exhaustion. Adrian stood in the doorway for a moment, as if making sure she truly felt comfortable. When she turned toward him, he looked at her with an expression she could not decipher. Something protective. Something unsettled. "Rest," he said quietly. "If you need anything, I am just outside." She nodded. "Thank you for everything." He hesitated 1 second longer, then closed the door gently, leaving her in a room she was never meant to see, but somehow needed tonight. Morning crept gently into the guest room, filtered through sheer curtains that softened the winter light. Maya stirred beneath layers of warm sheets, feeling a comfort she had not expected, a slow easing of the ache in her limbs. For a few seconds, she did not remember where she was. Then she sat up too quickly, and the memory of the snowstorm, the cold swallowing her breath, and Adrian's arms lifting her out of it all rushed back in a wave. She pressed a hand to her forehead, steadying herself. She had slept in the penthouse, in his private space. She had been carried here because she nearly collapsed in the storm. Her heart picked up speed. This felt unreal, like a memory she was not sure she had permission to hold. She slipped out of bed and found her clothes neatly folded on a chair. Someone had dried them. Someone had taken care of her. After changing, she opened the door cautiously. Soft music drifted from the main room, something instrumental and calm. When she stepped into the living area, she stopped. Adrian was there. Not in a suit, not with the sharp edge of authority she always saw at work. He wore a simple dark sweater and stood near the window with a mug in his hand, looking out at the city blanketed in white. He turned even before she spoke, as though he had sensed her presence. His eyes scanned her quickly, carefully. "You slept well." She nodded, unsure what expression to match with her swirling thoughts. "Yes. Thank you for letting me stay." Adrian set his mug down and approached slowly, his movements controlled as if he did not want to startle her. "How do you feel? Better? Warmer? A little embarrassed?" His brows lifted with a hint of concern. "Embarrassed." She looked down at her hands. "I did not mean to be a burden. I know you have a life and responsibilities and a company to run. You should not have had to rescue me." Adrian exhaled softly, something like disbelief crossing his face. "You think helping you was a burden?" "No. I think maybe I should not have needed help at all." His expression tightened. "Maya, you were caught in one of the worst storms this city has seen. No one could have walked through that safely. You survived. That is what matters." She opened her mouth to respond, but he gestured gently toward the kitchen. "Come eat something. You need real strength before you go home." The word home made her chest tense. She remembered the neighborhood she lived in, the cracked sidewalks, the loud late-night arguments, the unreliable heating. And she remembered how Adrian had looked at her fainting in the snow, fear etched into his features like a bruise. She followed him to the kitchen island where a warm breakfast was laid out. Not extravagant, just thoughtful. Toast eggs, fruit tea. She swallowed. "You did not have to make all this." He shook his head. "I wanted to." They ate in a quiet rhythm. Maya tried to ignore the way her heart reacted each time he glanced at her with that careful attention, as if checking she was still breathing. But she also knew she could not stay. She needed to return to her world before she forgot where she belonged. When they finished, she stood and smoothed her clothes. "I should get going. I have my shift later." Adrian rose immediately. "I will take you home." She shook her head quickly. "No, it is fine. It is not a long ride. Buses will be running again." He frowned. "The roads are still icy. I am not letting you walk or wait in the cold again." She hesitated. Adrian took a slow breath, steadying himself. "Maya, please, let me take you home." She finally nodded. The elevator ride down felt quieter than before. She stood at a polite distance, but he noticed her unsteady balance and shifted slightly closer, not touching, simply present. When the doors opened into the private garage, his SUV waited warm windows clear of frost. He opened the door for her not with showmanship, but with something gentler, something considerate. Maya climbed in, trying not to look at him too long. The drive from Midtown to her neighborhood was strikingly different from the world she had just left. Skyscrapers gave way to old brick buildings, narrow streets, uneven sidewalks. Children played in the snow near a corner store while adults shoveled pathways with weary determination. Adrian's hands tightened briefly around the steering wheel. He had seen neighborhoods like this before, but rarely slowed down long enough to witness the everyday lives within them. When they arrived in front of her apartment building, Maya felt a wave of self-consciousness. The building looked even more run down than usual, with snow piled against broken steps and graffiti visible beneath the frost. She hurried to unbuckle her seatbelt. "Thank you for everything. Truly." She reached for the door but stopped when she saw a group of loud teenagers across the street throwing snow and shouting. Nothing threatening, just chaotic. Her instinct was to move quickly, head down. Adrian noticed. His voice softened. "I will walk you to the door." She shook her head. "You do not need to. It is safe." "Mostly?" He raised one brow. "Mostly is not good enough." She opened her mouth to argue, but he was already stepping out of the SUV. She followed her boots crunching against the snow. They walked together to the entrance. Adrian slowed when they reached the steps, taking in the chipped paint, the cracked railing. Maya forced a small smile. "Thank you. For last night. For this morning. For the ride. For everything." Adrian studied her for a moment. His expression was unreadable, layered with thoughts he did not say aloud. "If you need anything, you call me." She shook her head gently. "I do not want to cross lines or cause problems for you. Maya," his tone was quiet but firm, "your safety is never a problem." She looked down, overwhelmed. When she looked up again, he was still watching her, still present, still unwilling to leave until he knew she was safely inside. She took a slow breath and nodded. "I will be fine." Adrian stepped back slightly but did not turn away. She opened the building door. Before disappearing inside, she met his gaze one last time. "Thank you, Adrian." His voice was low, almost a promise. "Anytime." She closed the door softly behind her, leaning against it for a moment as her heart steadied. Outside, Adrian remained where he stood, watching the doorway long after she was gone, as if leaving too quickly felt wrong. Then he finally returned to his SUV, the snow continuing to fall, and drove away, knowing something had shifted between them that neither could deny. The morning after Maya returned to Wolf Tower for her shift, the atmosphere felt different the moment she stepped through the employee entrance. Conversations that usually carried a neutral buzz now quieted abruptly when she walked past. A few employees exchanged glances. Others pretended to check their phones. Maya felt a pinch of unease but kept her pace steady, clutching her small tote bag a little tighter. She changed into her work uniform quickly and moved through the hallway toward the service elevator. Halfway there, she sensed someone behind her. When she turned, Lauren Pierce was standing with an expression too smooth to be friendly. Maya, a simple greeting, but edged like a blade. "Good morning, Lauren." Lauren stepped closer, crossing her arms. "Heard you had quite a night." Maya tensed. "What do you mean?" Lauren offered a sweet smile that did not reach her eyes. "Just that you were at the penthouse an entire night, and that Mr. Wolf himself brought you home yesterday." Maya's breath caught. How did she know that? Security cameras, staff whispers, and Lauren's own sharp eyes. Lauren leaned in slightly. "It must be nice having the CEO's attention. Not many people get that close." Maya straightened her posture despite the discomfort swirling inside. "Nothing happened, Lauren. I was caught in the storm. He helped me because it was dangerous out there." Lauren tilted her head in feigned sympathy. "Of course. But people talk. And they will continue to talk. Because things like this look a certain way, especially when a maid spends the night in the CEO's private residence." Maya's stomach twisted uneasily. "I did not ask for any of that. I was freezing. He just helped." Lauren's smile widened, the kind used when winning a point in an argument. "Exactly. You did not ask. But others will assume you did." She tapped her tablet lightly, then walked away with the confidence of someone who believed every rumor began with her permission. Maya inhaled slowly, trying to steady her thoughts. She stepped into the service elevator, leaning back against the wall as it began to rise toward the higher floors. The whispering only grew worse throughout the morning. Two housekeepers paused their conversation when she passed. A maintenance worker gave her an odd, assessing stare. At the 12th floor, a small group near the break room fell silent instantly when she approached. Maya forced herself to continue walking. She had survived worse than gossip. She could survive this, too. But she had not expected the confrontation waiting for her near the executive lounge. 3 employees stood blocking the hallway. All younger part of the new set of hires brought in after the reorganization. One of them, a tall man with a smirk, crossed his arms. "Hey, Maya. Heard you got some kind of special promotion." His tone made the implication unmistakable. Maya kept her voice even. "I do my job, just like everyone else." A woman from the group stepped forward. "Right, because most of us get personally escorted home by the CEO, especially after spending the night upstairs." Maya felt her cheeks warm with a mix of humiliation and frustration. "None of that is true. People are assuming things that never happened." The tall man scoffed. "Come on. Everybody knows what this is. Good for you, though. Climbing the ladder in your own way." Maya took a step back, feeling the corridor tighten around her. "Please let me through." The group shifted, but still hovered. Before anyone else could speak, a deeper voice echoed from behind. "Is there a problem here?" The group immediately straightened. Adrian Wolf walked down the hallway with the quiet authority that always commanded attention. His tone was controlled, his gaze steady, but there was an unmistakable sharpness beneath it. The employees parted as though pulled by gravity. Adrian's eyes scanned each of them before settling on Maya. She stood tense, hands clasped nervously. The tall man cleared his throat. "We were just talking, sir." Adrian's expression did not change. "Talking? Does that include blocking corridors and making assumptions about people who are only trying to do their jobs?" Silence fell. No one dared answer. Adrian took one small step forward. If I ever see employees standing in someone's way again, or hear about inappropriate comments directed at any member of the staff, there will be consequences. Do you understand? The group nodded quickly and dispersed. Maya exhaled relief, mixing with dread. Adrian turned to her. "Are you all right?" She nodded stiffly. "Yes, thank you." But her face revealed something else. Hurt, anxiety, embarrassment. Adrian noticed instantly. "What did they say?" She shook her head. "It does not matter. It does matter." His voice deepened, slightly protective. Maya's throat tightened. "This is making everything worse. You showing up like this makes people think there is something going on." Adrian looked taken aback for a moment. "I am not trying to create pressure. I just want to make sure you are safe." She stepped back, her voice trembling more than she wanted. "I know, but now people think I am getting special treatment. They think things that are not true, and it makes me look like someone using you." Adrian's expression shifted, a flash of regret crossing his features. He took a slow breath. "Maya, I never wanted my presence to make your life harder." She swallowed. "I just want to work quietly, keep my head down, like always." Adrian nodded the understanding, pressing heavily into his posture. "I hear you." His voice quieted. "I will be more careful." She nodded, unable to hold his gaze for long. When she turned to leave, he did not stop her. But after she disappeared around the corner, Adrian stood alone for a long moment, frustration tightening his jaw. Mere minutes later, Lauren passed through the hallway, her expression composed and innocent. Adrian's eyes met hers briefly. Something unreadable flickered across his face. And Lauren, catching the shift, smiled faintly to herself. The rumors had begun exactly as she intended. By the next morning, the tension that had woven itself into the halls of Wolf Tower felt heavier, almost visible the way fog hangs low before lifting. Maya arrived early, hoping the quiet hour before the rush would give her a chance to settle her thoughts, but even the silence felt sharp. She kept her head down as she cleaned the executive lounge, carefully aligning the chairs and wiping the glass table until it shone. She told herself she should focus only on work. Focus kept her safe. Focus kept rumors from finding new life. But the unease in her chest refused to fade. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A new email notification. Sender Adrian Wolf. She frowned. He rarely contacted her directly unless it involved work. She wiped her hands and opened the message. Except it was not what she expected. Not at all. Maya. I want to be clear. Your behavior last night was inappropriate. Do not mistake my kindness for interest. This company does not tolerate manipulation. This must not happen again. The words struck her like a sudden gust of wind. Inappropriate. Manipulation. Must not happen again. She reread the email again and again, each line cutting deeper. Her stomach dropped with a sickening weight. She had not asked to be rescued. She had not tried to get close to anyone. And yet the message implied something terrible, that Adrian believed she had used the situation to her advantage. Something inside her crumpled. But even through shock, something felt off. The tone was wrong. The phrasing stiff-clipped, unlike the man who carried her through a storm. Still, her mind betrayed her. Maybe he regretted helping her. Maybe he needed distance because people were talking. Maybe Lauren's words had planted seeds of doubt. Maybe last night's kindness had been a mistake. She closed the email slowly, hands trembling. Before she could gather herself, Lauren walked into the lounge holding a stack of documents. Her expression the picture of polite professionalism. "Morning, Maya. Everything all right?" Maya swallowed hard. "Yes, just finishing up." Lauren gave her a knowing glance. Rough start to the day. Her tone was falsely kind, too smooth. Maya felt her thoughts coil tighter. Did Lauren know about the email? Had she pushed Adrian to send it? She could not ask. She could barely breathe. When Lauren left, Maya closed her eyes, exhaling shakily. She needed space. She needed clarity. But Adrian was nowhere in sight. Usually he passed through this floor early in the morning, checking schedules or reviewing documents. Today he did not. Hours passed. He did not appear anywhere. Meetings kept him hidden behind closed doors, and every minute of his absence felt like confirmation of the email's harsh message. By early afternoon, Maya made a decision that felt like pressing a bruise. She requested a small personal leave through the HR portal. Nothing long, just a few days. Enough to let the rumors fade and let her heart steady. She avoided the executive floor entirely for the rest of her shift. On the 27th floor, while organizing supply closets, her phone lit up with 5 missed calls. All from Adrian. She stared at the screen in disbelief. Why would he call her if he wanted distance? Her heart pounded as she listened to the first voicemail, his voice tight with urgency. Maya, call me back as soon as you see this. The second voicemail, Maya, I saw your leave request. What happened? The third, please do not disappear like this. Talk to me. Her breath stuttered. None of this made sense. She opened the email again, now noticing the sender line more carefully. The address was almost identical to Adrian's, but not exact. 1 extra letter in the domain name. She gasped softly. Someone faked it. Someone wanted her to believe those words. Her mind raced back to Lauren's expression that morning. The small smile, the strangely timed appearance. But there was no proof, only instinct. Maya felt heat sting her eyes. She had been ready to believe the worst. She had been ready to walk away completely. She closed the fake email and pressed a hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. At that exact moment, the elevator doors opened down the hall and Adrian stepped out abruptly, scanning the area with visible worry. His posture was tense, jaw set, eyes searching. When he spotted her, something inside him seemed to release like air rushing back into his lungs. He walked quickly toward her, not running, but close to it. Maya. His voice carried relief, frustration, and something deeper. Why did you disappear today? I looked everywhere. She forced herself to stay composed. I did not disappear. I was working, and I needed some space. Space from me. His tone was soft but wounded. She looked at him, trying to find the words. I received an email. From you. His brows tightened sharply. What email? She hesitated, then handed him her phone. He scanned the message, his expression darkening instantly. This is not from me. His voice dropped lower. I would never say these things to you. Maya felt her breath catch. I thought maybe, with all the rumors, maybe you wanted distance. Adrian shook his head, the hurt in his eyes unmistakable. Maya, listen to me. I have not once regretted helping you, not 1 second. His sincerity hit her harder than the storm wind ever had, but before she could speak, footsteps echoed from the elevator. Lauren stepped out carrying a folder. Her eyes flicked toward them. For a brief flicker of a moment, something like realization passed over her face. Adrian turned toward her slowly, something cold and precise settling in his expression. Lauren, have you seen this? He held up the phone. Lauren lifted her chin. Sir, that address is clearly fake. Anyone could have sent it, and given all the talk lately, misunderstandings happen. Adrian's gaze hardened. His voice stayed controlled, but each word was sharp. Misunderstandings do not happen without fuel. He stepped slightly in front of Maya, a subtle protective gesture. And I have been wondering who benefits most from fueling them. Lauren blinked, her expression tightening. Sir, I assure you I would never. Adrian cut in quietly. Do not finish that unless it is the truth. A charged silence settled. Maya swallowed, her pulse racing. Adrian finally turned back to her, his voice gentler. Maya, I am sorry for everything you thought I said. For everything this has put you through. She shook her head. It is not your fault. I should have known. I should have trusted. Her voice broke slightly. Adrian's eyes softened. I just need you to talk to me, not disappear. It startled her how much that meant to him. She nodded slowly. I am here. For now, that was enough. But the misunderstanding had left a bruise on both of them, and neither realized how deeply it would shape what came next. The afternoon sky dimmed early, the heavy clouds gathering again as if Manhattan had not yet released its grip on winter. By the time Maya finished her final tasks for the day, light snow had begun falling, swirling softly against the windows. She moved quietly through the corridors, hoping to slip out without attracting attention. The misunderstanding still sat heavy in her chest. Even though the email had been fake, even though Adrian had insisted he would never speak to her like that, the echo of those words lingered. Inappropriate. Manipulation. Must not happen again. Not because she believed them anymore, but because she had believed them for even a moment. She tied her scarf carefully, preparing to step out through the employee exit behind the building. She wanted distance from the tall windows of the executive floors. Distance from whispers. Distance from the anxious hope she felt every time she thought about Adrian's voice. His concern, the way he kept looking at her as if making sure she did not vanish. But when she reached the door leading to the back courtyard, she paused. Snow drifted through the small space enclosed by service walls. The outside air pressed against the building like a cold exhale. She stepped out, the snowflakes touching her hair and melting instantly. Privacy here felt fragile but real. She needed a moment alone to breathe. A few minutes passed in the hushed quiet of falling snow before she sensed footsteps behind her. She turned quickly. Adrian stood in the doorway, framed by the soft glow of the hallway lights. His coat was unbuttoned, snow catching in the fabric. He looked at her with that same expression she had seen the night he found her in the storm, a mixture of concern and something he had not named yet. Maya shifted awkwardly. "You should be upstairs. You have meetings." He shook his head slowly. "I have been looking for you." Her breath caught. "Why?" Adrian stepped forward into the courtyard, letting the snow touch him as naturally as if it belonged there. "Because you left earlier without saying anything. Because I saw your leave request. Because I needed to make sure you were all right." She swallowed. "I am fine. Just wanted some air." There was a long, quiet pause. Snow gathered lightly on the ground between them. Then Adrian asked softly but directly, "What did that email make you think?" Maya's voice felt too small for the open space. I thought you believed I crossed a line. That I ruined everything. That the way people have been talking made you see me differently." Her hands curled inside her pockets. "And I thought maybe I should step back before I made things worse for you." His jaw tightened. "You stepping back is what makes things worse." The honesty made her chest tighten. She looked at the snow instead of his face. "I just did not want to be someone whose name gets whispered in hallways. Someone who looks like they are getting something they did not earn." Adrian moved another step closer, leaving only a short stretch of snowy ground between them. "You think I care more about hallway rumors than about you almost freezing alone in the dark?" She blinked, startled by the intensity in his voice. He exhaled deeply, visibly, struggling with the weight of everything unsaid. "Maya, there is something you need to understand. When I walked out into that storm, it was not out of obligation. It was not because you are an employee. It was because I was terrified something had happened to you." She froze. The word terrified echoed in her mind. Adrian rarely used emotional language, but tonight he did. He looked down, briefly gathering his thoughts, then lifted his gaze again, steady and open. "I have spent years keeping distance from people. I thought it kept things simple, controlled. But when I saw you on the security feed that night, I could not stay still. I lost every bit of that control." The wind picked up lightly brushing snow across their feet. Maya felt her heart thud once hard. She whispered, "Adrian." But he continued, voice quiet but unwavering. "When I could not find you at first, when I thought I was too late, I have not felt fear like that since my sister." He paused the moment, heavy but honest. "I do not want to go through that again." A soft tremor rippled through her chest. Hearing him say it aloud, hearing how closely he had carried that fear felt overwhelming. Maya took a tentative step forward. "Adrian, I never wanted to cause trouble for you. I never wanted you to feel like you had to protect me." He shook his head. "I did not feel obligated. I chose it. She inhaled shakily, snowflakes cooling her skin. "Then why did you avoid me yesterday? Why did you not speak to me before the rumors spread?" His silence stretched for a moment. "The board wants stability. They want clean image boundaries. Some suggested that I reduce close contact with staff, and for one moment, I listened." She flinched, her breath catching, and that made the fake email feel real. He nodded once, jaw tightening. "I am sorry. That hesitation of mine hurt you in a way I never intended." Adrian stepped closer until she could feel the faint warmth of him through the cold air. Maya looked up slowly, meeting his gaze. "I am not angry," she whispered. "Just confused and tired." He exhaled relief mixed with guilt. "Tell me to walk away, and I will." Her breath caught. The words came out low, steady. "Tell me to stop caring. Tell me to disappear, and I will do it, if that is what makes your life easier." Snow fell quietly between them like a curtain of soft light. Maya's eyes stung with unexpected emotion. Her voice trembled. "I do not want you to walk away." The moment hung suspended delicate as the snow settling on her coat. Adrian stepped close enough that the cold seemed to retreat between them. Something unspoken but strong passed through the air. He lifted a hand halfway, then let it fall, careful not to breach the space without her permission. Her breath formed a white cloud in the cold air. A single tear slipped down her cheek from everything she had held in fear. Confusion, hurt, and now relief. Adrian's expression softened in a way that almost broke her. "May I?" he asked quietly. She nodded barely. He reached up and brushed the tear away with the back of his knuckle, gentle enough to feel like the briefest touch of warmth. And before either of them could overthink it, she stepped forward into him, and he wrapped his arms around her carefully, protectively, the snowfall blurring the rest of the world. It was not dramatic. It was not rushed. It was simply two people finding the truth they had both been afraid to name. The courtyard held the moment like a secret. And for the first time since the storm, Maya felt steady. Night fell fast over the city, the snowfall thinning into a light dust that floated lazily down the streetlights. After their moment in the courtyard, Maya returned to finish her shift with a strange mix of calm and unease inside her chest. Calm because Adrian had told her the truth. Unease because the world outside their small, snowy corner still existed unpredictable and sharp around the edges. By the time she clocked out, the sidewalks were nearly empty, and the temperature had dropped again. She wrapped her scarf tighter and stepped into the chilled air, telling herself she could make it home quickly if she kept her pace steady. A few blocks from her building, the signs of her neighborhood grew familiar: the flickering street lamp, the corner store with its metal gate halfway down the cluster of old apartments with uneven steps. But something was different tonight. Voices echoed sharply from up the block, louder than usual. Maya slowed, noticing two groups gathered near the intersection. One group of young men stood outside the corner store, arguing loudly, gestures sharp and aggressive. A second group pushed back verbally from the opposite sidewalk, each exchange louder than the last. Their tension crackled in the cold air, a spark waiting for the wrong moment. Maya's pulse quickened. She had seen small arguments before, but tonight the atmosphere felt harsher, brittle from the cold and the exhaustion of people trying to survive winter. Snow flurried around them as the argument suddenly escalated. A bottle hit the ground with a sharp crack. Someone shouted. The groups shifted closer, lines blurring dangerously. Maya stepped backward instinctively, her breath catching. She needed to get inside her building, but the path was blocked by the forming crowd. A police car turned the corner, blue and red lights flashing across the snow, and an officer stepped out with urgent authority, calling for everyone to disperse. But the shouting only grew louder, people pushing, slipping, trying to move in too many directions at once. Maya found herself pressed between a parked car and the side of the building, trapped in the confusion. She tried to speak, to say she just needed to pass, but her voice drowned beneath the noise. Panic tightened in her chest as the groups surged closer. A young man bumped into her shoulder roughly while backing away. She stumbled, one foot sliding on ice. The cold bit into her palms when she caught herself on the snow-covered ground. Someone cursed. Another person shoved. The officer shouted again, but the chaos kept swelling. Maya's breath rushed out in small white clouds as she pressed against the wall trying to make herself smaller, invisible. But fear had its own gravity. Her mind flashed back to the storm, the helplessness, the cold swallowing her strength. Not again. Not tonight. She reached for her phone with trembling fingers. Before she could decide what to do, the police officer called for backup. More lights appeared in the distance. The noise rose. A wave of people pushed back suddenly, the entire sidewalk shifting unpredictably. Maya felt trapped. A wrong step could send her slipping. A wrong moment could pull her into the middle of an argument that had nothing to do with her. Her phone buzzed in her hand. Adrian Wolfe. "Are you home?" A strangled breath escaped her. She typed quickly. "There is trouble outside. I am stuck." She sent the message before fear could stop her. The reply came in seconds. "Stay where you are. I am coming." No hesitation, no questions. Just decisive, danger-edged urgency. Maya pressed against the building, watching as the scene grew messier. One officer tried to direct people away while another shouted instructions. Snow swirled in chaotic patterns around flashing lights. Her heart thudded painfully as she hugged her arms around herself, wishing the noise would stop, wishing the crowd would thin, wishing she could disappear through a closed door. 5 minutes felt like 20. Her hands numbed again from the cold. Voices blurred. The world narrowed to fear and the sound of her pulse. Then, a dark SUV turned the corner fast but controlled, stopping well before the police cordon. The driver stepped out first, showing identification to the officers. Immediately after, Adrian emerged from the passenger side. His expression when he spotted her said everything. Fear, relief, anger at the situation, and a determination so sharp it cut through the chaos like a blade. Maya. Her name left him in a breath that sounded like he had been searching for her longer than the drive could account for. He crossed the distance quickly, but not recklessly, careful not to interfere with the officers, positioning himself where she could see him clearly. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head shakily. "No, just stuck." He stepped closer until she could reach him if she needed to, his voice steady but thick with concern. "You are safe now. I am here." She exhaled shakily, the tension inside her releasing just enough to let her knees weaken. Adrian's hands hovered ready to steady her without pushing her boundaries. The officer nearby signaled for people to move away from the area. As the crowd finally thinned, Adrian slipped off his coat and wrapped it around Maya's shoulders without waiting for permission. The fabric draped heavily around her, warm, protective. Maya leaned into the warmth instinctively, her breath unsteady. The flashing lights reflected in her eyes. For a moment she felt too visible, too small in the chaos. Adrian noticed immediately, stepping subtly to block the harsh lights with his body, creating a small, sheltered space around her. His voice lowered, steady, despite everything. "Look at me. You are safe." The tremor in her breath eased. When police began clearing the street fully, Adrian led her carefully toward the SUV, his hand hovering protectively near her back, but never pushing. As she climbed inside, the warmth of the cabin hit her like a wave. She sagged into the seat, exhaustion washing over her. Adrian got in beside her, shutting the door firmly. For a moment, they just breathed in silence. Then he turned to her, voice quiet, but filled with a weight she had never heard from him before. "I almost lost you once. I am not letting that happen again." Maya swallowed hard, unable to speak. Outside, the sirens faded. Inside the SUV, Adrian watched her as if making sure she would not fade with them. The SUV moved through the quiet winter streets smoother than Maya expected, the hum of the engine steady beneath her racing thoughts. She leaned back against the seat, still wrapped in Adrian's coat, her pulse slowly easing after the chaos outside her building. Snow drifted past the windows like soft white ashes. The storm had weakened, but her nerves had not. Adrian sat beside her, angled just slightly in her direction, as if he needed visual confirmation she was truly safe. His face, usually composed and unreadable, still held traces of the panic he had felt when he saw her trapped between flashing lights and shouting voices. He had moved like someone who did not think, only reacted. Someone driven purely by fear of losing something important. They rode in silence for a few minutes until she finally spoke, her voice small, almost unsure. "I am sorry you had to come all the way out there." He turned to her immediately. "Do not apologize. Ever." She looked down at her hands in her lap. "I did not want to make things worse after everything that happened at work. The rumors, the misunderstanding, the email." His expression shifted sharply at the mention of the fake message. "None of that is your fault. Not a single piece of it." She hesitated. "But someone wanted me to think you said those things. Someone wanted me to disappear." Adrian exhaled slowly, frustration tightening his jaw. "And I will find out who did. Not through anger, through truth." Maya watched him for a long moment, noticing how the passing streetlights carved soft shadows across his face. There was something in his eyes she had not understood before. Something protective, but also conflicted, restrained, heavy. She turned toward the window. The world outside felt distant, softened by snow. When the SUV turned toward Midtown, she frowned gently. "Where are we going?" Adrian's voice was calm. "Somewhere safe. The company has an extra apartment for emergencies. It is warm, quiet, and far from whatever happened tonight." Maya shook her head instantly. "I cannot stay somewhere like that. People will talk even more. Rumors will get worse." Adrian looked at her, his voice firm but not forceful. "After what I saw tonight, I am not leaving you alone in that neighborhood. Not until things settle." She hesitated, torn between fear of the rumors and the undeniable relief of being away from danger. "I do not want you to sacrifice your reputation for me." Adrian's voice softened, weight lingering beneath each word. "My reputation is not what I care about right now." Maya felt her breath catch. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The SUV pulled into a quiet private garage beneath a modern residential tower. The lights were soft, the air warmer than outside. Adrian stepped out first, then opened her door, offering his hand without demand, just steady presence. She accepted it, her fingers brushing his briefly as she stepped down. They entered through a side elevator that required his key card. The space was silent except for the soft whir as the elevator rose. Maya tightened the coat around her shoulders, still processing everything. When the doors opened, Adrian led her into a minimalist, beautifully arranged apartment filled with warm lighting. Not extravagant like his penthouse, but still elegant, with large windows overlooking the city and a calm atmosphere that felt like a safe shell against the world outside. Maya paused inside, feeling out of place, yet grateful. Adrian watched her quietly. "If you are uncomfortable here, tell me. I will take you somewhere else." Maya shook her head. "No, this is fine. More than fine. I just do not want to cause complications for you." He set the keys on the table and took a slow breath, struggling with something he seemed afraid to say. "You do not cause complications. People do." He walked toward the window, looking out over the city lights. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Maya stood near the couch, clutching the coat around her like a shield. When he finally turned back, the expression on his face was raw enough to make her heart jump. "Maya, sit for a moment." She nodded and lowered herself onto the couch. Adrian sat across from her elbows, resting on his knees, hands clasped loosely in front of him. "Earlier, in that courtyard. You said you did not want me to walk away." She felt a spark of embarrassment at the memory, but also something warm. "Yes, I did. Because you looked like you would." Adrian met her eyes, and the room seemed to narrow to only the two of them. "I would never walk away from you, not unless you told me to." She swallowed hard. "Why?" He inhaled slowly, as if bracing himself. "Because I have cared about you longer than I should. Longer than I tried to admit." Her breath faltered. "Adrian, you cannot say things like that. Not with everything happening around us. I know what people are saying. I know how this looks. But I also know what is real for me." She pressed her hands together tightly. And what is real? Adrian's voice dropped to something steady, unflinching. The night of the storm, when I saw you collapse, something inside me broke. I have spent so much of my life building walls that never fall, but that night they did. Maya looked down, overwhelmed. You were scared for me, but fear does not mean anything else. His voice softened, quieter, but clearer. It does to me. He leaned back slightly, eyes never leaving hers. After my sister died in the storm years ago, I told myself I would never let anyone matter enough to pull me into that kind of fear again. But when I saw you in the snow, I felt it, and I knew you mattered. Maya's chest tightened painfully, too full of emotions she could not name. Adrian continued the truth, flowing out of him in a way that felt long overdue. I tried to ignore it. I tried to keep distance. Even listened to the board for a moment when they told me to create space, but it felt wrong. Wrong in ways I cannot explain. She closed her eyes briefly. You think I am someone worth risking all of this for? Adrian's response came instantly. Yes, because this is not just about danger or rumors. It is about something I've been trying not to feel since the first day you walked into Wolf Tower. Maya's breath shuddered. What did you feel? He held her gaze with a gentleness she had never seen in him before. That I wanted to protect you, that your presence quieted parts of me nothing else ever has, that when you looked at me it did not matter who I was or what everyone expected me to be. She felt her throat tighten as if emotion itself pressed against it. Adrian's voice remained steady, but the vulnerability beneath it colored every word. Maya, I care about you. A lot more than I should. Her heart thudded once deep and trembling. The room felt suddenly too still, too warm, close. She whispered, struggling to breathe evenly. You do not have to say any of this. He shook his head. I do, because tonight, when I saw you afraid and alone, I realized hiding the truth only makes it easier for someone else to hurt you again. Silence stretched between them, full and fragile. Then Maya spoke, her voice trembling. I do not know what to do with this. I am not someone from your world. I do not have money or power or anything that makes me belong beside someone like you. Adrian leaned forward, his tone quiet but resolute. Do not decide my life for me. Do not decide what I am allowed to feel. She clenched her fingers together. I am scared, Adrian. All of this is happening so fast. He nodded slowly. I know. And I will not push you. I will not ask for anything you are not ready to give. All I am asking is that you do not shut me out, that you do not disappear without telling me what you feel. She looked up at him, her eyes shimmering in the soft apartment light. I do not want to disappear. I just do not want you to regret caring about me. Adrian's voice fell to a deep quiet. The only thing I regret is not telling you sooner. The words settled around them, warm and steady. Maya felt something shift inside her, something gentle but profound, the kind of shift that changes the shape of a life. She did not move closer. She did not look away. She simply breathed, letting the truth sink in. For the first time, the silence between them felt safe. Morning light had barely stretched across the skyline when Wolf Tower stirred awake, the building humming with the usual low rhythm of early meetings, shifting schedules, and the echo of polished shoes on marble floors. Yet, beneath the familiar routine, something restless moved like an undercurrent. Rumors lingered from the past week. Whispers floated between departments, and tension brewed quietly among the senior executives who gathered earlier than usual on the top-floor boardroom. Maya arrived through the service entrance, clutching her tote bag as she always did, hoping to move unnoticed. But today was different. She felt eyes on her as she walked through the hallway, some curious, some judgmental, some simply confused about why the CEO had rushed to her neighborhood last night. She kept her pace steady, reminding herself to breathe. She was simply here to work. She needed to stay grounded. On the executive floor, the atmosphere felt heavier. Assistants carried folders faster than usual. Two directors whispered urgently near the window. and from inside the boardroom she heard raised voices only for them to fall silent the moment she passed by. A knot tightened in her stomach. She tried to focus on her task list, but before she reached the lounge, the double doors of the boardroom opened sharply. Adrian stepped out. He stood tall, composed, but there was tension in the set of his shoulders. When he saw her, his expression shifted, instantly softening in a way he did not show to anyone else. Maya paused, unsure if she should approach, unsure whether being near him would make things better or worse. But Adrian walked toward her first. His voice was quiet enough to keep the conversation between them, yet firm with purpose. "Maya, I need you to wait here for a moment, please." She swallowed, anxiety swirling. "Is everything all right?" He held her gaze for a long second. "It will be. I promise." Before she could respond, he returned to the boardroom and closed the door behind him. Through the frosted glass, she saw movement. People shifting in their seats, someone pointing at a chart, someone else shaking their head. The meeting had already been tense before she arrived. Now it seemed on the verge of boiling over. Maya stepped back, keeping a respectful distance even as her heart pounded. Minutes crept by slowly. Inside, voices rose again, muffled but urgent. Adrian's voice, deeper and controlled, carried through the door, though she could not hear the words. She recognized the tone, the one he used when he was drawing a line, when he was making a decision that would not bend. Suddenly, the doors opened once more, and this time one of the board members stormed out, frustration carved on his face. He barely glanced at Maya as he passed. A second director followed, whispering heatedly into her phone. A third shook her head in disapproval before stepping into the hallway. Maya's pulse quickened. Something had shifted. Something big. Adrian finally stepped out, his gaze settling on her again. Maya looked up at him, trying to read his expression. He hesitated just long enough for her breath to catch. Then he spoke low, steady, certain. "Come with me." She followed him down the hallway toward the main atrium, where light fell from the high glass ceiling in soft, pale beams. Several employees were already gathering for the day's briefings. Others hurried across the floor, stopping when they saw Adrian arrive. The CEO walking into the atrium unannounced was unusual enough. Adrian, walking in with Maya beside him, was something else entirely. Conversations paused. Phones lowered. Eyes widened slightly. A hush spread naturally, like people sensing a moment before they understood it. Maya felt her chest tighten. Adrian glanced at her subtle reassurance, a silent reminder that she was not standing alone. He stepped forward and addressed the floor with calm authority. "Good morning, everyone." The crowd stilled completely. Adrian continued. "Over the past few days, there have been rumors circulating about a member of our staff. Rumors that are false. Rumors that were created deliberately." A ripple of uneasy glances moved through the room. Maya felt her breath halt as she realized where this was going. Adrian scanned the faces around him, his voice firm but composed. "I want to make something clear. Our company does not tolerate false accusations. We do not tolerate intimidation. And we do not tolerate attempts to damage the integrity of any employee at any level." A few heads turned toward Lauren, who stood stiffly near the center of the crowd, her jaw, tight eyes flicking toward Maya, then away as if denying the connection. Adrian exhaled slowly, choosing his words with precision. "Maya Ellis is a member of this company. She works with dedication, with integrity, and she has earned her place here through her work, not through anyone else." Maya's heart thudded painfully. The room felt too still, the moment too large. Adrian continued, his tone dropping to something more personal, yet still professional enough to echo through the space. "I stood by silently while rumors spread. That was my mistake, and I will not repeat it." The crowd shifted, caught between surprise and curiosity. Adrian turned toward Maya slightly, his voice steady, clear. "I will not allow anyone to speak about her as if she is less than she is. I will not let her become a target for those who think power gives them the right to tear others down." Maya felt heat rise behind her eyes, not from embarrassment, from the weight of being defended so openly, so deliberately, in a world where she had always been invisible. Adrian stepped forward again, addressing the company as a whole. Effective immediately, any attempt to spread false narratives, harass staff, or manipulate internal communication channels will result in disciplinary review, and any further inquiries regarding this situation will come directly to me. Not HR, not gossip, me. The authority in his voice left no room for questions, no room for misinterpretation. He was not just protecting her privately, he was choosing her publicly, in front of everyone. Maya felt her breath shake. She had not asked him to do any of this. She had been terrified of making things worse for him, terrified of being the reason he faced backlash, but he had made his choice with full clarity. The atrium remained silent for several seconds after he finished. No applause, no whispers, just a deep, quiet acceptance that the CEO had spoken and what he said would stand. Adrian glanced at her again, a softer look in his eyes. Then he signaled gently for her to follow him out of the atrium. The moment they reached the quieter hallway beyond the crowd, Maya finally spoke, her voice trembling slightly. "Adrian, why did you do that?" His shoulders rose and fell with a slow breath. "Because I needed everyone to know that what happened to you matters, that your dignity matters, and that if anyone wants to challenge, that they can challenge me first." Maya swallowed, overwhelmed. "You did not have to stand up for me like that. You did not have to put yourself in the middle of it." Adrian looked at her expression, steady and warm. No hesitation anywhere. "Yes, I did." Her chest tightened. "Best. You could lose support from the board. You could jeopardize things." He shook his head slightly. "My job is to lead with integrity, not fear." Maya's hands trembled slightly, still clutching her tote bag. She looked away, trying to hide the emotion rising too quickly. Adrian stepped a little closer. Voice soft but firm. "You are not alone in this. Not anymore." She finally looked up at him. "And what if this makes things harder for you? What if people talk even more?" His response came without pause. "Then let them talk. I know what is true. I know what I choose." His words settled into her like warmth in a cold room, and she realized something that shook her more than any rumor. Adrian had not chosen reputation. He had not chosen caution. He had not chosen silence. He had chosen her, publicly, irrevocably. And for the first time in years, Maya felt seen, truly seen, not as a maid, not as a rumor, but as someone worth standing beside. Adrian held her gaze for a long heartbeat, then spoke quietly. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." She felt the words steady her breath, anchoring something deep inside. "Yes," she whispered. Together. 1 year after the night that changed everything, Manhattan welcomed another early winter. The sky a soft silver canvas above the city. Snow drifted in gentle spirals over the streets, settling lightly on rooftops and trees. The storm this year was calm, almost peaceful, a quiet echo of the blizzard that had once nearly taken Maya's life and rewritten the course of two people who never imagined their paths could intertwine. Maya stood at the large glass window of the Wolf Tower Employee Care Office, a place she never expected to work, let alone help manage. A subtle badge pinned to her blouse read, Assistant Manager of Employee Care, a title she had earned through months of dedication, training, and determination. She looked around the office, feeling that same quiet gratitude she felt every day. The walls held warm colors. There was a small lounge where employees could decompress during difficult shifts. A new support program had recently launched to help part-time workers navigate healthcare and transportation, something Maya helped design after understanding firsthand how vulnerable frontline workers could be. She never forgot where she started. She never forgot the cold. She never forgot the feeling of being invisible. And now she made sure no one in this building felt that way again. A gentle knock sounded on the doorframe. Maya turned to see Adrian leaning casually against it, hands in the pockets of his coat, his expression soft beneath the calm authority he carried everywhere. "Time for lunch?" he asked lightly. She smiled. "Give me 2 minutes." She organized the remaining papers on her desk, placing them neatly into the folder labeled Winter Support Initiative, then grabbed her scarf. Adrian stepped aside to let her pass, falling into stride beside her as naturally as breathing. They walked through the building together past employees who greeted Maya warmly. A few nodded respectfully toward Adrian, though their expressions were less stiff than a year ago. The public declaration he made months earlier had changed more than just internal attitudes. It changed the company culture. It changed him. People now treated Maya not with suspicion, but with honest regard. Not because she was connected to the CEO, but because she had proven herself day by day in ways impossible to deny. Adrian glanced at her as they stepped into the private elevator. "How are you feeling today?" She shrugged gently. "Good. Busy. The end-of-year rush always hits employee care the hardest." He smiled faintly. "You say that like it is a bad thing." She lifted her chin with a small playful glance. "It is not. It means people trust us." Adrian pressed the button for the ground floor. As the elevator descended, he watched the numbers quietly, then looked at her again, the light in his eyes soft. "I am proud of you." She felt warmth rise in her chest. "You say that often." "Because it is true, often." She fought a smile, but lost. When they stepped out into the lobby, snowflakes drifted down through the glass ceiling, catching the light in a dazzling shimmer. Maya paused to admire the way the city blurred into a winter watercolor beyond the tall windows. Adrian watched her rather than the snow. He remembered so vividly the fear he had felt 1 year ago, the heavy panic that had seized him when security cameras blinked out, the cold sting on his face as he ran through the blizzard, searching for her. The moment he saw her half buried in the snow, still fragile life pressed thin by the storm. A chill moved through him even now just remembering it. He inhaled deeply, grounding himself in the present. Maya caught the subtle shift in his expression. "You are thinking about that night." His voice softened. "I always think about that night. It is a reminder of what almost happened, and what I almost lost." She touched his sleeve gently, reassurance passing through her fingers. "I am still here. I am not going anywhere." He nodded slowly. "I know, but it still feels unreal sometimes. That you are safe. That we are here together." They walked outside and crossed the street toward a quiet cafe tucked between two tall buildings. It had become their place over the past year, a small corner of comfort where they could talk not as CEO and employee, but as two people learning how to build something steady in a world that moved too fast. The hostess greeted them with a warm smile and led them to their usual booth by the window. Maya watched the snow fall lazily onto the sidewalk, people passing with scarves wrapped high and heads lowered against the chill. Adrian rested his hands on the table, gaze lingering on her face with an expression of gentle admiration. "You look happier lately," he said. "I am. Work feels meaningful. It feels like I belong somewhere. You have always belonged." She laughed softly. "Not always. Not in the rooms where I used to work, not in the hallways where people whispered, not in the neighborhoods where danger waited at corners." She paused, then looked at him with sincerity. "But now I feel like I have a place, a purpose." Adrian nodded as if committing every word to memory. Their food arrived and they ate slowly, talking about the upcoming holidays, the new winter relief program, and how this year's snowstorm was predicted to be much milder. After lunch, they stepped outside again. Snow dusted Maya's hair soft and delicate. Adrian brushed a flake from her shoulder with a careful touch that carried more affection than words could. They walked without hurry, letting the afternoon stretch. When they reached a small park bench overlooking the East River, Maya stopped breathing in the cold, crisp air. The city glittered in reflection on the water, and the faint sound of distant traffic hummed like a familiar lullaby. Adrian stood beside her, his presence steady and grounding. After a moment, he spoke quietly. 1 year ago, I thought I had everything under control. My life, my choices, my distance from others. And then a storm shattered all of it in a single night." She turned to him gently. "Sometimes storms clear the path." He huffed a soft laugh. "I suppose they do." She looked at the river again. If that night had gone differently. His voice deepened with quiet honesty. "I do not let myself imagine it. Because the reality is enough. You are here, alive, stronger, building something important, and I am grateful every day for the chance to see that. She felt emotion tighten her chest, the good kind, the kind that made breathing feel fuller, warmer. I am grateful too, for you, for everything that changed, for the life I have now. They stood in silence for a while as snow continued falling softly around them. Eventually, Maya reached for his hand, not boldly, not dramatically, but simply naturally. Adrian's fingers curled around hers gently as if holding something precious. They stayed that way, letting the quiet winter moment wrap around them like a gentle memory in the making. When they finally turned back toward Wolf Tower, walking hand in hand beneath the falling snow, Maya glanced up at him with a smile full of quiet certainty. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For coming for me. That night, every night after." Adrian squeezed her hand lightly. "I always will, as long as you let me." She leaned her shoulder against his arm as they walked. "I will." Snow continued to drift around them soft and unhurried as they made their way home through a city that had once nearly taken everything, but had given them each other instead. If you are still here with me after this long emotional journey through snowstorms, second chances, and the quiet kind of love that grows when two people finally see each other clearly, then thank you from the bottom of my heart. Stories like this one are not just about a billionaire or a maid or a blizzard. They are about the moments in life where someone chooses you even when the world tells them not to. They are about the nights when help finally arrives the second you think you have to face everything alone. They are about the fragile truth that sometimes the smallest person in the room is the one who holds the greatest strength. And if any part of this story made your heart tighten, made you pause for a breath, made you smile quietly, or made you feel just a little less alone, then I hope you can carry that warmth with you long after the ending. Before you go, I want to ask you something from one storyteller to another. What was the moment that stayed with you the most? Was it the night Adrian ran through the storm without thinking of anything except reaching Maya in time? Was it the misunderstanding that almost pulled them apart? Was it the moment in the courtyard when truth finally broke through the cold air between them? Or was it the scene in the boardroom where he stood in front of everyone, choosing honesty, choosing dignity, choosing her? Every reader feels a different heartbeat in a story like this, and I would love to know which part echoed in yours. Tell me in the comments so we can keep sharing these moments together. And if you want more stories like this, more emotional journeys, more slow burn romances, more characters who fight quietly and love deeply, then make sure to follow the channel. Your support helps me bring more stories to life, and every single like, comment, and share tells the algorithm that these stories matter, that people want more warmth, more hope, and more healing. You can also let me know where you are watching from. I know many of you join from across the United States, from small towns and big cities, and many of you watch from around the world, too. I love hearing where these stories travel because it reminds me how far a single moment of kindness can reach. And if you want to be part of choosing what the next story will be, then tell me in the comments. Do you want another billionaire romance? A story about a single parent finding love again, a runaway bride, a winter rescue, a mistaken identity, a second chance at life, or something completely new? I read everything you write, and your ideas always help shape the next chapter we share on this channel. Until then, thank you again for spending your time with this story. Whether you listened while cooking, driving, working, or winding down for the night, I hope it brought you a little comfort, a little escape, and a reminder that even on the coldest nights, someone out there might be walking toward you with warmth you did not expect. Stay safe, stay warm, and never forget that your story matters too.